Hi, this is Nathan, and I would just like to provide a quick demonstration of my skills in Excel. So, as this is just a demonstration, we'd be using a sample dataset, and also I'd be using macros and scripts that I created to better demonstrate my skills and make the task more efficient. Take note, using macros are only for the tasks that are repetitive, while script may be more flexible, so it would depend on the projects that I would be handling. And right now we'll be starting. So just as a demonstration in here is, of course, we'd be checking all of the inconsistencies in the data. And of course, standardizing all of the data set so that we can create a proper report out of all of the information that we have. Now, what I'm checking is for extra spaces, mixed capitalization, um, duplicate invoice IDs, missing values, inconsistent payment statuses. As you can see, there is complete and paid, which is essentially the same. Blank values, currency values as just numbers, um, not mixed capitalization and everything. So what I'm gonna use right now, just to demonstrate the macros that I created. So I created several spaces in here, making the data much more inconsistent, right? So what I'll be using is the macro that I created as the trim function, which would remove all of the spaces to make it more uniform. And of course, we'd just be using um, formatting for the date to make it, much more uniform again. There you go. Of course, there would be some data sets, so it depends on your preference whether the month or the date goes first, or the date or the month goes first. So it depends on the client or your preference. So I can do it manually or just follow this format so that we don't have to edit each and every data set. And next is, as you can see, the mixed capitalization of the companies. Although there might be companies that is all caps, I do understand that, but it's easier to read if the data is uniform, right? So what we can do is using the proper capitalization function that I created, and this is a macro that I created. So once we do that, it would automatically um, standardize all of the data set of the client. As you can see, it is all consistent. First letter is capitalized and the rest are small letters. The second word, of course, would also be capitalized on the first letter. And then after that, we'd be checking what this is for. There might be just a hiccup on the dataset that we created or that we received. So I'd just be checking all of those, and as you can see, all of these are the same, so we'd just be deleting that and then standardizing this as currency. And then we can also see here the mixed capitalization. So we'd be using the macro that I created for the trim just to remove any hidden extra spaces, and then we'll be using the proper capitalization script that I created. Then after that, we'd be using the regedit function so that we can standardize the payment status for it to be just completed or pending, and to prevent any confusion. And so it would also be easier to create a report out of it. And then this would be the first copy of the first data cleanup that I created. Now, it is already standardized. Now, what you can see in here there are some information that are highlighted. So as I have mentioned before, I would be checking for duplicate entries and missing values, right? So what I did was use this function, the if function. I would just like to demonstrate how it works. So I'd just be copy pasting that function, and just in case that this whole column has a missing data value that we didn't notice, it would automatically detect it and then replace it with n/a. So we'd try a1, then of course it would automatically autofill it, then we'll check it. So now that this function is already done, we'd like to test it. So just an example, if this is empty, it would automatically replace it, just like that. Now I'd just like to delete that. Now, I deleted the formula, of course, so that we can use it to pivot table later. And now that we have replaced all of the missing values as NA, we can easily detect it by providing a conditional formatting. So this is the conditional formatting that I created, in which it would automatically highlight any information that is saying duplicate or NA, so it would be easier to detect. Now we just have to, double check in our records if it's actually correct, and then we're done with the basic cleanup. Now, once all of the data is standardized, we'd be creating a table. As you can see, it's much more easy to read, easier on the eyes, and then creating the pivot table. So how do I create it is just pretty easy. Just highlight all of this, then insert, pivot table, whether we'd be creating a new sheet or within the existing sheet. But I'd like to make the data safe first. So I created another table just for the demonstration. Now it would all depend on how you want the data to be presented, to be reported. So I just created two tables for demonstration purposes. So what we can see in here is the sales rep performance, or what is the current or the highest contribution of the company that contributes to the sales representative sales. As you can see with John, 43% is from XYZ Ltd, and we can, of course, we can determine what are the reasons behind John's success in this certain company once we know all of the statistics. And of course, the client trend on which time of the month, or which day of the month, or which month of the year we have much more clients to cater. So these are the samples that I created, and if you want to know more about my skills, or an in-depth guide that I that I would that you would like to be created, or explanation that you would like to be heard, I'd be open to conversation. And I think that is it. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.